These days, you've probably heard a lot about narcissists. Well, you are in the right place if you want to learn more, because our author, Carol Beth Nelson, MD, has a new book that is so engaging, so inspiring about how she, as a very intelligent physician, a brain doctor, a neurologist, married a narcissist and was in that marriage for 24 years. And her book chronicles what that was like, and she shares advice to you to identify narcissists, to avoid this experience, and how to get out if you're in one. So I want to welcome you here on the Two Sisters Writing and Publishing channel to our newest author. We're so proud of you. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for helping me.
You're welcome. So it was just back in March or April of this year that you and I connected, and here you
Right.
are holding your book in your hands.
Yep. Got the book and I love it.
Yes, it's called We Are Alike. And can you read the subtitle, please, Carol?
We are like a memoir, how a doctor leveraged her neuroscience expertise to survive and heal from narcissistic abuse.
hmm And that is you. And you so beautifully and courageously told your story. Can you talk about why you decided to write this book?
A lot of answers to that why. I think when I first started writing it sort of blossomed out of journals I was already keeping. I've been a journaler since I was in my 20s, really. I started to journal to kind of get things down on paper and therefore out of my brain where they would like circle and circle. And so I would write it down to kind of organize my thoughts, I suppose.
Mhm.
Um, and so I started journaling a long time ago. There were periods of time I did not journal as much. Like when I was in medical school, I barely had time to shower sometimes. I wasn't also journaling. Um, as I got more and more volumes of the journals, I just thought it would be nice to kind of get it for myself therapeutically, to get it sort of all in one spot and sort of to take stock of my life and where I came from and what I've gone through and where what I've become and how I've grown from that very, very painful experience. And when I was writing, I was also reading a lot. Like I just tend to, like when I can't figure something out, it's a little bit easier for me to intellectualize it, I think, than to really delve into my emotions. And so I started reading a lot, and then those books kind of added up. And I thought, well, I might as well put it all in one spot. And then I thought, I think I could probably help people with this. I think I could help them identify what a narcissist is and are they in a narcissistic relationship and what's your brain doing? Why is my favorite organ keeping me stuck in this situation? And that there's light at the end of the tunnel. You just have to hang in there and you have to do it. So that was a long answer to why, but
I
it
love
was a
it.
long process.
I love it. So, can you start by explaining what is a narcissist? Because there's so much online about it.
Mhm.
Please help people get clarity.
Well, um, when you're looking at what a narcissist is, you really want to go kind of by the clinical criteria of what makes them truly a narcissist. Narcissist has kind of become a buzzword, and I don't know that it's used necessarily appropriately. And some people we can all have some narcissistic traits, and that's normal. And like if you look at a teenager, they have a lot of narcissistic traits, which scared me when my teens were doing that because I thought, oh no, what are they becoming? But they appropriately outgrew it. But a narcissist, in short, is somebody that doesn't have empathy. And empathy is the ability to feel what somebody else is feeling. So, in order to be in a long term relationship, you have to have somebody with empathy. They have to be able to not necessarily read your mind, but they need to be able to tell when you're feeling sad or upset or anxious or something's making you feel uncomfortable. And they have to be able to subconsciously feel that in order to bond with you and help you through it or to move forward. And a narcissist does not have empathy. So they don't have the ability to read you, and they don't have the insight to realize that they don't have that. And they don't have the insight to realize that a lot of the issues are coming from within them and therefore they can't change.
Hmm.
So they tend to be people with no empathy who are very manipulative. They want what they want and they want it now. And narcissists came from the original Greek mythology of somebody uh, named Narcissus. And there's stories on different parts to the legend, but it was somebody who basically loved himself and loved
Hmm.
himself so much that he couldn't do anything else and just kind of died unable to move away from his image in the water.
Hmm.
So it's people who look out for themselves.
Hmm. Now, does a person who develops into this, is it a chemical balance in their brain that causes this, or something genetic, or is it the environment that creates them to be this way?
It's exactly known. All the stuff that I read about there wasn't anything that I read that we know exactly why somebody has it. But what they think is that it's somebody who's genetically predisposed, but then they also have the environment. So, and a lot of there's different ways that can happen, but a lot of times it's kids that were maybe not given the adequate attention that they need, so they're kind of searching for attention. So they think it's a little bit genetic, but then also environmental.
Hmm. Hmm. And Carol, you just said that narcissists lack empathy, but they tend to prey on people who have empathy. And obviously, as a physician, you have tremendous empathy because your whole mission is to help people feel better. So, can you talk about that dynamic just to sort of alert people out there if they're an empath to be on the lookout?
Mhm. Title of this book is We Are Alike, because we're all different, but we're all alike in that we can be fall victim to a narcissist. And so the victim is, we are not necessarily the same, but as a general rule, we do tend to be empathic people and a little bit more likely to fall victim. I think just kind of tend to see the good in somebody rather than suspecting that something's not good in them. And then it takes you a while to learn that, that wasn't very nice.
Hmm.
So yes, you're as an empath, you're more likely to fall victim.
Hmm. Okay, then can you take us through the different phases that a narcissist takes someone through before they realize that they're hooked into this situation?
Yeah, they do. I always say that, the thing predictable about a narcissist is that they are somewhat predictable and they use a lot of the same mechanisms. So they tend to start out with love bombing, and they tend to be really charismatic people. So they're kind of the life of the party. You're sort of naturally interested or are attracted to that charisma. Even as an introvert, I think I was, you're just kind of attracted to the person that's kind of funny and kind of owning the room somewhat. And then there's a love bombing phase where it almost seems like you were made to be, which of course that also happens in real couples that are not that are healthy. But it seems that almost you're like the same person. You have the same beliefs and you like the same things, and they're very willing to give you compliments in that phase. And then once you're hooked, and hooked can mean different things. It might be that you're kind of in this relationship that you're dating, but it's maybe become a little bit longer term, or you're like committed and you're exclusive, and or it might be that you're married, or it might be that you've had a child. There's certain steps along the way where it's a lot harder to get out. And as you get deeper into those phases, they sort of take their mask off a bit and you start to see these things. But um, one of the ways that they manipulate you is through gaslighting. And I think a lot of us have been part of episodes of gaslighting, but they're very, very confusing. And so you can't understand their point of why they're doing it. It kind of, they keep you on this unsteady foundation as you might be talking about one thing and it sort of shifts and all of a sudden you're arguing about something else and you're like, how did we even get from, how did we get here from there? And then
Hmm.
you're like arguing about not even the same thing and you never resolve what was originally started. So there's a lot of manipulation and then they just, they love themselves, not you. So they get meaner. And so you start, in my case, I kind of started to realize something was wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Even as somebody who I'm trained in neurology and psychiatry, and I'd read it, but that's somebody else. When you're learning it in medical school, like, that's somebody else. But it's very insidious how they draw you into this. And it's not like one day they're nice and they're love bombing you and the very next day.
Hmm.
However, they might do that back and forth, but it's not like, oh, the mask came off and you're a bad person and I'm not going to marry you or not have a child with you. It's
Hmm.
very insidious and you kind of get sucked in and you don't realize how did I become this person that I am now? How did I get to the point that I go to the grocery store and I'm like, oh my gosh, does he like Ziploc or not like Ziploc? Well, I'm just not going to get either because you start to question your all your decisions because you don't know if you're
Hmm.
going to go home and you're going to get in trouble because you bought Ziploc instead of a different brand or whatever.
Hmm.
That's a very vague example.
Hmm. But Carol, in We Are Alike, your amazing book, you have a whole marriage of examples, motherhood, professional issues, family issues, where you give examples to demonstrate what it looks like to be with a narcissist. So, can you give us a few examples of how this dynamic played out in your marriage? And you have four kids, right?
Yep, I have four great kids.
Hmm.
Um, Yeah, I was really busy because I not only was working as a neurologist, but I was part owner of that group. So managing a business and especially as a new neurologist, you're still, you're kind of honing your skills and doing things like taking my board exams and things like that. Really busy. And a really big example of what happened with me is that my ex-husband, now ex, um, he took over the finances, and I'm like, great. I do not have time to do, and you should do something. Um, and so I sort of over time gave up all access to anything financial to the point that I did not even have any idea how much money we had. I had a checking account, but he would put money in it, and I didn't have access to the joint account. And my check was going right in there. And now it's super embarrassing to tell that part because it's like, how in the world did I get to that point? But you don't, it happened insidiously. It was slow and it was a little more and a little more and a little more until I didn't even have access. I had to ask for money. For 11 years of our marriage, he was not working, but he was working like very as needed very, very part time, like a few hours a month. And so he was not working and it was all money that I was making and I had to ask for money. And
Wow.
then he'd say, well, what did you do with the last 100 that I gave you? I'm like, well, that was 2 weeks ago. So I don't know, I don't remember what all I did, but could I have some of my money back, please?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. So
Hmm.
now there's a term for that. It's called financial abuse.
Yes.
Um, I just learned that term a few months ago, but that's what happens. But it's really remarkable. But again, Carol, let's please underscore how this happened because you were working long hours as a physician. You had four kids. They were small, they were busy, they were growing, they were close in age, and you had a dog or two, you had a house, you had other family obligations. So it's just like this perfect storm for you to just be trapped. And then please talk about
Yeah.
how you couldn't just leave.
Yeah. I felt very trapped. And as somebody who should be independent, feeling trapped is very hard. but I felt trapped because, first of all, I didn't know how much money I had. Like by the time I saw the account, we had $247. I was working 50 to 60 hours a week and had been for 20 years by that point.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, yeah. And I was not spending a lot of money, but there was like, we had 3 or 4 lawnmowers and like just things were showing up. And he's like, well, I know how much money is in there, so I can buy it. So, so I couldn't leave because I didn't know how much money. I couldn't leave because I didn't really know the process. Like just to think you're going to get divorced, like, what's the process? What do you do? I didn't know. Um, and I also did not know if I would get my kids. And so I thought if I only have my kids every other weekend, because he was considered the primary caregiver because he was willingly not work, but he was not working. So I would have potentially gotten my kids every other weekend, which was I couldn't do. I couldn't do it for lots of reasons, but I couldn't be sure that he was going to pay attention enough that they were safe. I wasn't sure what sort of psychiatric issues he would be, manipulating them with. So I couldn't, once I found out the law and what that is where we live, it was off the table. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't leave. I was
Mm-hmm.
not gonna leave my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and it's also, it's considered a failure, to get divorced. To me, I feel like it's a huge success for the people that can get out that need to get out.
Yes.
But in society, it's a failure. And I
Mm.
am like an ultra competitive person.
Mm-hmm.
And so failures feels really bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's also, we were Catholic. Um,
Mm.
you don't get divorced in the Catholic Church unless you want to sit there with a big scarlet A on your chest if you want to go back to church. And so there's so many reasons I didn't leave, even though the biggest thing was I needed to leave because
Mm-hmm.
my soul was dying. I was not who I used to be. I would think of myself, in high school or in college, and I was very intense, but happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a good life up until how I started the book, which was things started to turn when I was 22 years old and my husband of 9 months died in a car crash. And so I was very traumatized by that, which I think is also one of the reasons I was very vulnerable to somebody coming in and protecting me and saving me and giving me the love that was very suddenly ripped from my arms.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there were lots of reasons I couldn't leave until I could,
Mm-hmm.
until I got everything lined up. And I always felt like I was standing right on the edge of this cliff in or a pool of cold water. Like once you lean far enough over, there's no going back. You're going to fall.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt like I was just like right on the edge of that cliff and I needed to jump, but I knew that water was cold. And so I didn't really want to do it. And so I stood on the edge of that cliff for a long time until I had the things in order where I knew my kids would be safe and I had as much as I could kind of figure out what the money situation was, which at that point didn't matter. I was losing all the money anyway. So if I was going to be working, I might as well know where it's going. And then I jumped. But once you file and you let them know, it's like being in the air, jumping off that cliff. You can't go back.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to know I was ready to jump and that I was strong enough to jump.
Mm-hmm. So, Carol, who is the ideal reader who you want to reach? Like, is it a woman who's married to a narcissist, has kids, feels trapped, is scared, doesn't know what to do, has no control or power? Who is your ideal target reader?
Couple, I think somebody who feels like they're me, somebody who feels like they've lost control of parts of their life that they should be. I mean, finances, if it's not a joint venture, it should be both of your decision to decide that only one is making all of the decisions. So if somebody finds themselves feeling that like they're trapped and there's weird things going on that maybe you can't quite explain, that it's potentially gaslighting, it's them to see you can get out. you can get out. And in my book, I explain why your brain kind of keeps you in there. But you can get out and you can have goodness and happiness on the other side. You can do it. You just have to move beyond that edge of the cliff and you just have to jump. And
Mm-hmm.
it's scary and it's long and you don't know when you're going to hit that warm water at the bottom, but
Mm-hmm.
you will.
Mm-hmm.
And and so it's for them so that they know they can get out because that's an awful, awful feeling of being trapped.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also, I think a second target would be younger people. Like as a general rule, narcissist is more common in men. So throughout the book, and my narcissist is a man, so I do use that gender, but it can be in any gender. So it would also be people that are in their 20s and 30s that are like trying to decide if they should be in this relationship or not. Because there were a few things in retrospect that were sort of odd when we were dating, but I didn't have a place to file them. I didn't know what gaslighting was. And actually, that wasn't a term back then that I'm aware of. So I couldn't put that information anywhere and file it appropriately to make a good decision. And then as he became a more overt narcissist, which they do over time, they develop. So when they're 20, they might not be very developed, but they change over time. And so now I would look at it and be like, "Oof, my gosh, that's a terrible narcissist." But back then, I didn't see it. And again, I was so traumatized from the loss of my husband that I just wanted that love back. So I was very susceptible. But if people that are dating can read what I've written and read these gaslighting examples, of which there are multiple, and be like, man, that sounds like that's what's happening to me, at least then they can jump in with their eyes open and know what this
Mm-hmm.
is. So I would hope to have somebody not take 24 plus our dating years, 25 years to go from identifying a few things to kind of being able to finally get out. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's a long time. And for me, rectifying the loss that, those really good years of my life were covered by this cloud where I never really felt truly happy. I mean, my kids made me very happy and I was very invested in that. But I knew our relationship was not what I had before, and therefore
Mm-hmm.
what I knew love really was. So I would
Mm-hmm.
want to shorten that path for somebody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, Carol, my experience with narcissists is that they offer something unique. Like you use the word charismatic, but there's something about them that's so special, and they make you feel a certain way with the love bombing, or they have a special skill, talent, status, something about them. And there's this lure that I'm not going to find this anywhere else. And that
Mhm.
keeps a person hooked or stuck. And so, can you talk to a person out there, especially a woman, who thinks this person that they're with, even if they're exhibiting these characteristics of narcissism, if they think, oh, I'm never going to find someone this great, and look where we live, and look what he does, and look at his car, and he's so nice, and he buys me. How do you help that person get out?
I think that's hard because I think there's such a veil over you during that phase that it does feel good. And it feels like somebody who's seeing you for the first time because you both want to do the same things and you like the same things. And maybe your family values are the same. And it looks on paper like it lines up. And that's how it looked to me. And, but they're pretending and they can't hold that. And it's interesting with narcissists, they're either somebody who is an overworker and an overachiever because they do like that status, or they don't work at all. And I had one of those. So, but they like people that are empaths. They also like people who have raised their status on their own or through their family, but hold some status because they feel like that is pulling them up and that they earned that status and they are that person. And because they truly feel that they are part of your brain. Like, I don't think they'd say that out loud. And if you told them that, I don't think they would believe that. But they truly feel like what you have accomplished is theirs to have the pride in as well. Yeah, it's very that part's so disconcerting to me because my brain is mine, but he thought my brain was his. And so if we were walking through the door and I walked a little faster than he thought I should, and I wasn't listening, he wasn't controlling my brain, then all of a sudden he'd be yelling at me for something. And of course, I had no idea. And he used to say these comments, and I'd say, I'm not in your brain, so I don't know what you're talking about. Like, this is totally out of left field. I have no idea what topic we're on. And it's because they think that your brain is theirs and that they're really controlling it, not on a conscious level, but on a subconscious level. So to think that somebody controls your brain is just for for me as a neurologist, especially, I mean, that's my very favorite organ. And I want my own.
I love that. My favorite organ. That's so cool. So, Carol, you do have some events that people can come meet you, get an autographed copy of your book. So, please tell us about those.
So I have an event. I have two tomorrow because the book just came out a week ago. So
Mhm.
I grew up in a very small town of 800. And I have an event, a signing and a launch at the library there. My dad was a doctor in the town there, and he practiced medicine for 50 consecutive years. Actually, I think it was 51 or 52 in South Dakota. And he's sort of, I mean, he was my dad, so I think he was great. So he's sort of a legend there.
Uh-huh. I
And so
love
he
it.
practiced medicine there as one of two physicians there. And I practice there. I do an outreach there once a month. And I just love going there because I grew up in that clinic and I just like, oh, I can't wait until I'm a doctor and I want to be a doctor. And so I go back there once a month, but they've been super supportive of this whole thing. And so I
Uh-huh.
have from 10 to 12 tomorrow, I have a launch in the public library where I grew up. And then from 3 to 5, also tomorrow, I have one at a place called Oh My Cupcakes, that is owned by an author,
Oh,
somebody else that has written some books. Yep. And so I have a signing there, and that's in the town where I am, which is a bigger town, which is Sioux Falls.
oh, okay.
And then on the 24th, so on Monday, where I work, which is a town about an hour from here, there's a launch and signing there with hors d'oeuvres and wine from 5 to
Oh,
7 tomorrow. So yeah,
oh,
or on Monday. So yeah.
that's awesome. So I hope that you have a wonderful time. It's such a beautiful feeling when your friends, family, colleagues come together and
Yeah.
celebrate this wonderful accomplishment of writing a book.
Yes.
And
Yes. People are very supportive of it, and it's fun. It's fun when you're used to being like I'm definitely an introvert, and you're just are kind of taught to be humble, and then people are giving you these good accolades, and you have
yeah,
to just, I'm learning to try to soak that in.
yes, yes,
It's
yes, yes.
fun though.
So I really want to ask you, Carol, you were going through all these things. One is the self-care that you had during that experience with all this pressure, and secondly, how you've healed afterwards.
So my self-care became exercise. So when I was, well, 10 years before I left, I started running more regularly. And I did that because I felt like I could clear my head out there on the gravel roads. We lived in the country. And I feel like it's accomplishing something also. Like you can feel yourself getting stronger. And then as my kids got older, they would run with me. And, I started out running 2 miles a day or when I would go, which wasn't every day. And then ultimately I ended up doing 4 marathons and that was over time. Yeah. And so that was nice to see that you can try hard and accomplish something. And then I started doing triathlons. And so I've done a few half Ironmans, and those are really hard. I find exercise, it does increase your endorphins or your natural painkillers. And there's a lot of dopamine, which is your happy neurotransmitter. But the sense of accomplishment and controlling my own body is really good for me. So it was very therapeutic for me.
Mhm.
I also have really, really good friends that were willing to sit and listen to me say the same thing 17 times until I had it sorted out. And so my really good friend that's a psychiatrist who wrote the foreword, she helped me a lot. And I had a friend that was right in my clinic with me, another neurologist. So she was right there with me. And if I was starting to tumble, we were just, right down the hall from each other. And we were both going through some stuff right at that time. And so my friends were incredibly helpful. But then once I was finally out the door, the divorce was probably final. Yeah, the divorce was final. Um, a savior came in that happened to be my OB-GYN and asked me what I was doing for myself. And I said, oh, I'm running and I'm doing these things. And she's like, no, what are you doing for yourself? And she wouldn't let it drop. And she's like, you have to go to this person as a therapist. So I started going to a therapist, and I've been doing that ever since then. And that has been very healing because it's really good to know it wasn't a fallacy in me that made that happen. And she has helped me get past this thing that I said, that many years with somebody in basically the prime of my life. Feels a bit like stolen time, but she's helped me to realize that I was growing during that time, in addition to my children, which is a more obvious answer. But I was growing in myself and my independence and my strength so that I could get out and so that I could be happy on the other side. And
Mhm.
now I have a great husband and he's super supportive and he also will listen to me say something over and over
Oh.
when I'm trying to work through something. So
Mhm.
exercise, therapy, family, and friends. Also my sisters and one of my brothers, especially when I was kind of waffling, he said, okay, you're filing for the divorce on Monday. I will be there. We'll give it to him together.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
That
Hmm.
support network is everything.
Yes.
Do you have any tips for someone who wakes up and realizes, oh, I'm in the same stuck situation and I want out? What's your advice to them?
I think you have to sort of take stock in who you were before and kind of what's happened during that period of time. And are you that same person? Like, are you becoming somebody that's saying things to your significant other that you would never have imagined coming out of your mouth, but it's because you're sticking up for yourself? Um, and I think just realizing there's a path and everybody's path is different. But the way I thought of it, my path was very long, getting out and healing. But every single one thing you do is one step closer. I didn't know where the end was. I didn't know if it was a marathon or a 5K, but I knew every single step was one step closer to being to this foggy, vague end. But you can do it. You just have to gather the support around you and you can get out and you can be happy. I would have never thought I would never ever I would have listened to somebody saying this and I would have been like, yeah, but that's not me because I can't get out for whatever reason. You can.
Mm-hmm.
Your light, you have one life and it has to be a great one. It has to
Mm-hmm.
be a great story
Yeah.
and not the kind of story that makes you write a memoir. So you've got to make your story great.
I love that. So, very fittingly, you have a happy ending. Please tell me, how did you learn how to love again, to trust, to give your heart to another person and have a happy marriage?
The therapy, first of all, I had to feel like I deserved it. I had to feel like it wasn't my fault that I was somehow a raging person because I wasn't. He was making me. It was crazy making. I wasn't crazy. It was crazy making. And I had to realize I was worth it. But for me, I had to think back of my first relationship, my first husband who died in the car accident, and I wanted that back.
Mm.
I wanted to be loved and I wanted to be vulnerable and I wanted to feel whole. And everybody may not do that, but I realized I am made to be part of a couple because I loved it so much. And that's partly why I fell, is I wanted it back, and so I found it in the wrong place. So I had to open myself up to it and be vulnerable, which is hard. And you're constantly, or at least early on, you're kind of looking for those little things that feel funny that you might not be able to put your finger on, and stop and dive into that a little bit and see if it's a trigger, or is it something that maybe is with that person that is maybe not sustainable.
Mm,
But it does take a leap of faith too. And for me, it ended up good. But like I said, I never would have thought, listening to somebody say this, I would have thought, well, that can't be me.
mm-hmm,
But you
mm-hmm,
just have to take the steps. Every step is a step closer, and it's a long, long marathon. But if that's what you want, and you take the steps and you do the things you need to do to heal in yourself before you go search for somebody, then you can do it.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, we are so proud of you, Carol, because your book is wonderful. It's so courageous. It's a wonderful read. It just flows. And you weave in your personal story with your professional expertise in a way that's really, really engaging. And so I want to congratulate you on writing the book and thank you for coming to Two Sisters Writing and Publishing to publish. Because as your editor, I was just enthralled. So, congratulations.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for all your help. Really, I would not have done it.
Yeah.
So,
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. And also, the book is available in hardcover and paperback anywhere you buy books online, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, our website, twosisterswriting.com bookstore. In the paper, the ebook will be coming out very soon. And so, if you don't have a chance to be in South Dakota this weekend or Monday, or if you're watching this after the fact, you can buy the books online. They're a great gift to someone. And even if you're not engaged dealing with a narcissist, you can learn a lot by reading Carol's book. So, any final words, Carol?
um, something that my niece, who was an advanced reader for me, who is a lawyer and who has done some other help with other people that have been writing their books, so she's got some experience with it. But as a lawyer, she said, this is good for somebody who's maybe in it, but it's good for people to read so that if they know somebody that's in it, they can understand where they're coming from and be a
Oh,
good friend in that process for them. And I
mm-hmm,
thought that was good, because I
mm-hmm,
want to be a good friend to somebody. Of course, I've experienced it, but in other situations too.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I love that. That is beautiful. Well, all of you out there, please get We Are Alike by Carol Beth Nelson, where she talks about how she got into a narcissistic a relationship with a narcissist, a marriage, became the mother of four children with them, and ultimately left, healed, and now has a happy ending and a powerful message to share with you. You can find it again at anywhere you buy books online. And Carol, we just want to thank you and congratulate you and wish you the best.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining me here on Book Talks. See you soon.
I'll talk to you soon. Bye
Okay.
bye.
Bye.